Another day in the shop, another video. We got a 2008 Ford Escape, no start. It was towed in. He said he was having problems with the key. Sometimes it would start, sometimes it wouldn't start, depending on how he was pushing on the key. I did make a video on this before. That was actually the ignition switch that was bad. Today I'm going to show you the ignition lock cylinder housing that gets worn out and then it doesn't turn that ignition switch far enough. So let me kind of show you how to diagnose it, and then we can go from there and show you how to replace it. All right, so hopefully you can see that okay. Our ignition switch actually sits right here. The lock cylinder housing, ignition switch housing sits under here. So I'm just going to turn the key and try to start it. And you can push in and it does not start. Now I'm going to push on this ignition switch. See how I just turn that? There's a little play in here because it actually just snaps in. So that's this little play is normal. But what gets wore out is the lock cylinder housing. So let's try that again. I'm holding the key over to the start position. I'm just going to try and rotate this. So what happens is it's wore out enough where it's not turning the ignition switch far enough to start. So that's what I had to do to get it started out in the parking lot. You got the knee bolster here that comes down, and then the shroud around the steering column. There's 5.5 millimeter bolts, 3 of those. Take that cover off, and then we can get in here. There's 3 5.5 headed screws. There's 3 of those that you got to take off, and then there's a security bolt you got to get loose on the other side here, actually on this side, that clamps this whole thing around the steering column. So let me bring you to the bench and I'll show you what we're going to replace here. So there's a part number right there, 989019. Let's open this up. This is a Dorman part. There's our new security bolt. It's a shear bolt, so you tighten it up until the head snaps off. Let's pull this out of the box here. If you have any questions, call that number. Okay, so this is what we got here. This is the clamp that goes around your steering column. That's where your security bolt goes. This is where your ignition switch, actually this is your ignition switch here. So when you buy this, the ignition switch is already installed. It just, your plug goes in here. So this is where, like I said, those tabs are. It just clips in, pushes in this way. So yeah, ignition switch is already installed in this one. You have to switch over your lock cylinder, obviously. And then your sensor for your security actually goes around here and clips on. So you won't have to do anything with security. You'll be able to pull the sensor off, put it aside, and then replace this part. And you should be good to go. There's a couple bolts. There's one that goes in here. There's one that goes in here. And there's one that's going to go in here underneath the steering column. This one you'll have to rotate the steering wheel to the side and get this one out, and this one just at the top there. So let's get back to the car and I'll show you how to get the old one out and put this one in. So the first thing we're going to do is take our wire harness clips out of there. There's one on this side too. Try not to break them like I just did. And then we're going to disconnect our ignition switch. And that's on this side. It's just a push tab right there. We're going to disconnect that. We're going to disconnect the back of the multi-function switch here. there's a connector for that. Now we need to take our sensor off, security sensor. Let me get a little pick for that. It's just a little tab here that comes loose. I'm going to set that off to this side. I'm going to take our key. I'm going to turn our key, and then we're going to move our steering column, or steering wheel, so we can get in here and get this bolt, or screw, excuse me. So I'm just using, I got an extension with a wobble on it. I think that should get us in there. It's a 5.5. You got a swivel, that'll probably work too. Might work even better. So there's our little screw. Turn this back. There's one up here. We also need to get loose. Take this one loose. Okay, so there's that one. The other one is underneath here. So now you can see that we got this bolt here, and we need to get this bolt out. So a lot of times I'll just take a hammer and chisel and knock that loose. There's no Loctite or nothing on there, so usually you can just get that to spin. So let's try and knock that loose and see if we can get that clamp loosened up. All right, so we got our punch here, and we're just trying to punch this, or chisel, use a chisel and try to get this loosened up, and it should turn out pretty easily. But let's give her a couple whacks here. So you see it is turning. That turned almost one revolution there. And you can see I can spin that out with my fingers. And there it is. So we're going to try and get this out of here. And it takes a little finagling a little bit. So it'll slide down. And get your clamp. Again, it's kind of finagling it around here. All right, there it is. So at this point we can pull our key out. Oh, there we go. So there's our tab we're trying to push down. So it would be in the, it's in the on position is where it's at. You kind of got to rotate and see when this will actually depress. Right there, so it's the on position. But there's your lock cylinder, and then that can go back in the other housing the same way. Now pay attention to where this receiver is in the new part. If it's not lined up like that, you'll have to turn it to get your lock cylinder in. So let's grab the new lock cylinder housing and we'll get that put in. Okay, so here's the old housing. You can see this receiver in here. I call it a receiver, I'm not sure what they call it. But it's in a position where that corner lines up kind of here. Let's grab the new one and I'll show you where that one's at. So like I said, here's the new one. And it's a little bit off, if you can see in there. So we're going to take our, I got a pick that works pretty handy. We're just going to turn this and get it halfway close. So like that, our lock cylinder should go in there no problem. You can put the lock cylinder in now if you wanted to, or wait until you get it all put in. It doesn't matter. So let's get this wrapped around the steering column here. Takes a little finesse here to get this around the wiring and everything else. We gotta make sure this gets lined up so we can get our bolts in here. Just gotta kind of work it around until it fits into place here. We do have this in the bottom here that needs to go in the steering column too. It's like a lock bar. I just want to get it up in place here first. Okay, I think we're close here. So I'm going to take my new security bolt. We got our, there's a little bit of a gap there. You're going to have a little bit of a gap. We're just going to put the security bolt in like that. I'm going to put our ignition lock cylinder in. Hopefully this fits the way we took it out. We might have to move it just a little bit here. Oh, there it went. All right. So that all works like it should. Okay, so right now we're lined up. We can get our screws put back in. I'm gonna just barely tighten that security nut. So I'm not going to break it off yet because I just want to make sure that it's where it should be. Snug. Everything looks like it's going to go back together like it came apart. I'm going to put our bolt back in up here, or screw. Again, we're going to turn our steering wheel. So I'm just going to slide this screw in there. Hopefully it slides in the hole there. Looks like it did. Oop. The wobble's not wobbling so much. This just goes into plastic, so it's not like super high torque here. Okay, That one's good there. We'll put the bottom one in. If you can see what I'm doing here. It looks like it started. All right, I'm gonna plug my ignition switch in. Multi-function switch, let's plug that in. That's on this side again. Just two connectors on this side, and then we swing over our security sensor here. Take our key out. And then this is going to snap right back into place, hopefully. Just like that. All right. There you have it. Just tighten it. Now, of course, you're making sure everything's seated here. We got no more gap in this clamp, so it's seated right and it's tight. So now we're just gonna tighten it up until that snaps off. Just like that. And now when you want to take this back apart, you gotta do the same thing with a chisel. But then so does the thief. So I guess that works out. Try it again. And that's all there is to it. Hopefully that helped you out. It happens all the time with the Escape. I put a lot of these in. I also put a few ignition switches in too. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.